Good morning. Today we're going to be going through a little more multiplication of polynomials. If you recall, last time we learned about multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. That means a single term by something with multiple terms. So in this case, for your bell work or for your warm-up problem, I'd like you to multiply the monomial by the polynomial. So go ahead and do that. Type in your answer over on the side. The next slide is just going to show the answers to both of these questions. To question 1 and 2, it's just going to be the answers. So go ahead, enter your answers now. Now that you've entered in those answers on the side, I'm going to go ahead and switch over, and this is just going to show the answers to these two questions, so you can check your work. So here, we've distributed the 2 to the negative 3u squared, giving us negative 6u squared, and likewise for the rest of that multiplication. Same thing with question 2. Distributed that 2a, leaving us with now a cubed, a squared, and a for our terms. Please let me know if you have questions on these. Now let's go ahead and move on. What we're going to do today is continue to learn to multiply those polynomials, and again, distributive properties are going to be very important, so is combining like terms. What we're doing today is actually looking at things that are not just monomials multiplied by polynomials. We're going to look at polynomials multiplied by polynomials. That might mean a squared plus b multiplied by something like a cubed plus 3b minus 2a. We'll be multiplying things that are not just monomials. All right, let's move on. If you recall, we learned the distributive property, or we used the distributive property, which I'm sure all of you already knew in the previous lesson. We take that value out front, that monomial, this one term, and multiply it by all of the terms inside the parentheses. Well, there's also a vertical method we could use. Now, if this were just a monomial, we could use something called a vertical method, which is similar to how you may have learned to multiply two-digit numbers. So we have a squared plus 3a minus 4. A vertical method is kind of like this, and that might look similar to something like 32 times 12. Well, think about how you would do this problem. How would you solve that? We can do something very similar here. We multiply each of these terms by what we're multiplying, in this case 2a. However, we're now looking at a binomial, meaning a polynomial with two terms. So what are we going to do? Well, think about what you did here. If we were to have a 2 or 3 or 4-digit number that we're multiplying, well, you would multiply by one of those values. So 3 times negative 4, 3 times 3a, and 3 times a squared. And I'm going to do that really quick. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. 3 times 3a gives me positive 9a. And 3 times a squared gives me 3a squared. Well, I can't forget about this 2a. Just like I would do in a second or third or fourth digit, I'm going to now multiply by that second, third, or fourth digit. In this case, it's the second digit, or second place. It's the second term. I have 2a. Now, 2a will be multiplied by negative 4. And I'm actually going to put in a placeholder of 0, and that should make sense why we're doing that. You don't have to. When we go to combine like terms, we'll only combine like terms. But in this case, 2a times negative 4 gives me negative 8a. Now I'm looking at things that can be combined. That's kind of why the placeholder is there. Although we don't need it, we just combine those like terms. Now we multiply 2a by 3a. That's going to give me 6a squared, and 2a by a squared, leaving me with 2a to the third. Now, my last step, I can combine all those like terms. Negative 12 and 0 is just negative 12. 8a and negative 8a, that's just positive a, or positive 1a, if you'd like. 3a squared plus 6a squared is 9a squared, and 2a cubed has nothing to combine. And so here we have this multiplied polynomial. That's the vertical method. Some students might prefer the vertical method. Others might look to something else. That other method is called a horizontal method. And in this case, we actually break up what we are multiplying. One of the polynomials, we're going to break it up. And so in this case, I'll break up that first one. However, you might notice it might be easier to break up the second one. We're going to have 2x squared, where that is multiplied by that second polynomial. So 2x squared times 3x minus 1. Then minus x times the polynomial 3x minus 1. Then minus 2 times 3x minus 1. So this is the broken up polynomial where 2x squared is here, negative x is here, and negative 2 is here. And it's horizontal because this entire process is now laid out horizontally. To solve this, you multiply the monomials out front. Don't forget that negative x and negative 2 need to be multiplied. Some students may gravitate toward this process. You go ahead and try it out. Enter in your answer, and I'll put in the answer in a second. Now you may have found this to be your answer. However, we can simplify this a little bit. And if we notice, there are some like terms to be simplified. Negative 2x squared and negative 3x squared. Also, x and negative 6x. X cubed and the constant 2 have nothing to be combined with. So our final answer should be 6x cubed minus 5x squared, that's those two combined, plus, minus 5x, because x minus 6x is negative 5x, and then plus 2. This should be your finalized answer. And again, that's the horizontal method. Now, there's a fourth method here called the box method. I'm sure there is a better name for it, but this is actually my preferred method as a student. I would almost exclusively multiply polynomials in this way. You make a box, kind of like a Punnett square, if you remember from science class, where you're looking at different traits like curly hair or straight hair, and if two creatures would have offspring, what's the likelihood of their offspring to have curly or straight hair? You can identify that with a Punnett square. Well, this is very similar. We're going to multiply these polynomials using this box method. You can see I've made a box that is 2 by 3, and the 3 are going to be the 3 terms of that trinomial. So 7r squared minus 6r minus 6. Notice how the negative stayed with those terms. Now the vertical portion of this box will have 2r and negative 4. Now I'll simply go through and use this box like a Punnett square and multiply those values. So 7r squared times 2r gives me 14r cubed. And I'll continue that for the rest of the box. So negative 12r squared, negative 12r, negative 14r squared, 24, a positive 24r, and a positive 24. Remember, negative times negative is going to give you a positive. Now, I can combine like terms just like I would do in any other situation, and it's kind of cool with a box method like this. If it is set up in a certain way, you're going to end up with like terms on the diagonal if you wrote your powers in order that should occur most of the time. So we can go ahead and combine our like terms. 14r squared is, or r cubed, is by itself. Negative 14r squared and negative 12r squared combine to give us negative 26r squared. 24r minus 12r gives us positive 12r, and 24 is just left there. So this is a simplified polynomial. Here's one for you to try. These are both binomials. You can use whatever method you'd like. You can break it up and use the horizontal method. You could set it on top of each other and use something like a vertical method. You could even use a box method. But you go ahead and solve this or try it yourself, and in a moment, I will go through it and show you the answer. So go ahead, try it now. So now that you tried it, I'm going to go through quickly, and I'm going to use my preferred method, the box. I'm going to write this binomial, 2x and 3, and then I'm going to write this binomial, 4x and 1. And then I'm going to go through and multiply. 4x times 2x gives me 8x squared. 3 times 4x gives me 12x. 2x times 1 is just 2x. And 3 times 1 gives me 3. careful. Sometimes this process, although it's mostly just multiplication, people will forget and they'll say, oh, 3 times 1 we get 4. Careful, don't add, we're multiplying here. So we end up with 8x squared. These two combine to give us 14x, and then we're left with just 3. This should be your answer. Now go ahead and try this example. And in a moment, I will just put the answer on the screen. I'm not going to explain through this process. So you try it out, put your answer, and you'll be able to see the answer, the correct answer right away. So here is the answer, 2x squared minus 2x minus 12. Now if you'll notice, I had a step in between, where I had two middle terms, or two just x terms that were not simplified, and then I simplified it. Now there's going to be a method that might make the most sense for everybody, and I'll show you that in a moment, but I want you to try another one first. So here you go, a trinomial multiplied by a binomial. Go ahead, try it out. Use any method you'd like. And in a moment, I will just show the answer, just like the last slide. So go ahead, try it. So here you can see the answer. Check your work. See if you got it correct. Now, another method, and it's kind of foggy whether or not I should be explaining this to you or not. There's a, I guess, kind of mental block that some people get into if they learn this method. This is used when multiplying two binomials, meaning something like 2a plus 5 multiplied by 3a minus 2. Those are two binomials because they are two things with, or it's one thing with two terms. We have one term, two terms. We're multiplying two binomials. Now, this method is used only for multiplying two binomials, which actually occurs pretty often, and you'll see how it relates to quadratics soon. Now, this FOIL method, F-O-I-L, stands for first, outer, inner, last. And like I said, this isn't really supposed to be taught because some students will think, that's the only way you can do it. If we don't have two binomials, we can't multiply. Or, oh no, all of a sudden I've got a trinomial, like 2a to the third power plus 5a minus 2 multiplied by 3a minus 2. And they look at this and they say, I can't do it. I'm not capable of multiplying that. I only know how to FOIL. Well, you can still do it. You can still multiply those. You just have to multiply every term by everything, right? So learning FOIL, for some students, could make them think, I can only ever FOIL. But I'll show you because it's a potentially easier way to think about this process, specifically with two binomials. When we look at the word first, it means multiply the two first terms. So the two first terms of the binomial, 2x and 4x. That gives us 8x squared. The outer terms, that's the ones on the outside, so we end up with the 2x and, the 2x and the 1. So those are the outer terms of the binomial. Then multiply the two inner terms. We have 3 and 4x. And then multiply the last terms, so 3 and 1. And then you've multiplied everything inside, and you can combine your like terms. So this should result in 8x squared plus 14x plus 3. There are a lot of ways to get there. A lot of people, they like to use this FOIL method. But again, look out for the pitfall. It's not the only method. The second you get a trinomial, don't freak out. You can use a different method to get there. So go ahead, try this one out. You can use the FOIL method, you can use a box method, a vertical, or even horizontal method to solve. In a moment, I'm just going to show the answer so you can check your work. Now that you've tried it, here's the answer. 2n squared minus n minus 6. Let's go on to the next one. You go ahead, try this out. Multiply any method you'd like. You can FOIL, use the box method, vertical, or horizontal. And again, now that you've tried that out, here's the answer. 20v squared plus 11v minus 3. All right, last one. I want you to try this out. Don't freak out. It is two trinomials, but you can multiply it using any method you want. FOILing isn't necessarily going to work. The idea behind FOILing, multiplying everything by everything in the other polynomial, will work. But it's not just the first, the inners, the outers, and the last, because we have 3 terms in each now. So go ahead, try it out. I'll show the answer in a moment. All right, now that you've tried it, here's the answer. Now it looks pretty big, but it all comes from our process of multiplication and simplifying exponents. So there's your answer. For the last step for today, I want you to go to IXL and I want you to practice. And I know I've made mistakes here before in getting the right skill down, so I've left this blank. I'm going to look at IXL right now on my computer, and I'm looking at Algebra 1, AA, nope, see, good thing I'm looking here. Algebra 1, Z8. Algebra 1, Z8. And just so we know that we're all on the same page, this is called multiply two binomials. Okay? Multiply two binomials, what I want you to practice for today. That's where you're multiplying things like a plus 2 times b minus 7. Two binomials. That's your practice for today. Get that up to 85% or higher. And as always, if you have questions, let me know.